Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners' 16th Budget Work Session. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. For those presenting today, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. And our first briefing this afternoon, or this first work session, is on the Multnomah County Library District budget. So I will turn it over to Annie Lewis, our Director of Libraries. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am delighted to be here with you today to present the Library District and Library Department budgets. My name is Annie Lewis, and I am the Director of Libraries, and I'm joined here by Katie Scheifele, the Library's Finance and Facilities Director, to present our district budget. Jeff Renfro is also in the audience to help answer questions as needed, and we have additional library leaders in our audience to be able to come up for questions and who will be coming up later, in addition to our CBAC, who will join us for the second part of our presentation. I am incredibly excited and grateful to share that this summer, the library is concluding our unprecedented multi-year period of library modernizations. Last week, as you all know, we opened the doors at the incredible new East County Library for the first time. Woohoo! And this summer, we'll also be opening the doors to patrons at St. John's and Belmont Libraries, completing all, yep, right? So we're super excited. And so that'll complete all of our large-scale projects for the bond. But this period of transformation isn't just about buildings. We've modernized our operations as well as updated our staffing plan, and we've introduced new technology for our patrons and staff. We're also trying new approaches to keep our libraries as safe as we can under challenging circumstances. These changes, as you know, are all happening against the backdrop of a truly challenging fiscal landscape. As you heard during our March forecast presentation, the operational cost impacts of the 2020 bond are materializing right now as the library is facing headwinds in terms of slowing property tax growth rates and rising personnel costs. The fiscal year 2027 budget is organized around planning for the needs of our newly modernized system despite these financial headwinds. In the next fiscal year and in the coming years, the libraries will take steps to mitigate the impact of increased costs with thoughtful planning and by carefully aligning our staff positions and services with the community's needs. It hasn't been easy to meet the moment while staying within our available resources, and we've had to make some trade-offs, but the library has remained focused on our strategic plan outcomes and serving the needs of our community. All right, let's go to the next slide. We're going to kick off with, Emily, we'll go back. We're going to kick off with the Multnomah County Library District presentation. And we're starting with the Library District first so that you can see how the financial forecast informs our budget approach for the Library Department. Please keep in mind that as we go through the district presentation, that much more detailed information on our programs and services will be in the department presentation. Okay, next slide. I'm going to begin by talking about governance and operations. As you all know, the Library District is operated under an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County, governed by this body. The district is a separate entity from the county and contracts with the county for the provision of library services. District resources can only be spent on library services, and the district board has authority over the services that are purchased from the county. The district financial policies are distinct, but are developed in collaboration with the county chief financial officer and are approved by you all, and follow the same best practice as the county. Katie's now going to talk about the library district fund structure.
Good morning, everyone. Katie Scheifele, Finance and Facilities. Oh, yeah, good afternoon. I say good morning all the time, you guys. It's good afternoon. Katie Scheifele, Finance and Facilities Director for the library. If we could go to the next slide, please. So just a quick reminder, this slide shows the financial relationship between the library district and the county library department. So you can see that revenues, which are for the library district primarily property tax revenues, are collected on the library district fund side and then spent via a contract for the provision of library services with the county library department. And then on the county library fund side is where all of the library's personnel costs, our annual book budget, internal service costs, all of our programming and supplies costs are expended. And those expenses are funded by the library district, so the property tax forecast, like Annie said, for the district is what informs and then drives the development of the library department budget every year. Next slide, please. So we'll get into the details of the forecast in just a few slides, but we wanted to pull some highlights for you up top. The approved budget, as you all know, is based off of the continuation of our current levy rate, which is $1.22 per $1,000 assessed property tax value. And it's going to be our 7th year at that rate. And also, as you all know, the maximum levy rate is $1.24 per $1,000 of assessed value. With our total property tax revenues increasing by just a little over 4%, we have had to address a deficit as part of our FY27 budget development, and we will get way more into the details of the sort of how of that balancing when we get to our department presentation. But just kind of more broadly and looking out ahead, those long plan changes in services, operating expenses, staffing models that are underway right now are rolling out in a pretty challenging financial landscape. And one of the things that we've talked about internally and kind of flagged for ourselves and want to flag for you all going into next year is that FY27 is going to be the first time in a long time that we've had all of our new library spaces open, and we'll be kind of truly stress testing these new staffing models, operation models, things along those lines. And so we're moving forward cautiously and planning for more financial challenges on the horizon and knowing that we might need to be making some mid-year adjustments next year. Next slide, please. The original goal of the district was to establish 10 years of stable funding for the library, and we're now into the 14th year of the library district. This is the 2nd consecutive year of an operating deficit for the library, and so while there's a little bit of levy rate capacity left, we obviously know that we're dealing with a structural operating deficit that's kind of inherent to the district's funding model. At a high level, the district's financial outlook is a pretty challenging picture, and we're going to talk about each of these areas on the slide in more depth as we move forward through the presentation. But just flagging kind of up top that our current forecast model anticipates that we're going to be maxed out on our levy rate in fiscal year 28, although we're going to be kind of reassessing that as we move forward. So it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion, but our current modeling suggests that we'll be at that levy rate next year. And our fund balance is robust. We'll spend some time talking about fund balance today as well. But we do see that kind of rapid growth that we've seen over the last several years as being temporary in nature and primarily related to bond-related underspending. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. Next slide, please. So next up, we've got to look at the library district forecast drivers. And on the revenue side, I mean, you've heard Jeff discuss all of these in a lot of detail, so we're not really going to get too deeply into it today. But generally speaking, we're at the bottom of a development cycle with very limited activity on the horizon, and downtown office high-rise properties are really dragging down overall assessed value growth, combined with initiatives like the multi-affordable housing tax abatement program and various new tax increment financing districts that are diverting tax revenue away from the library district. On the expense side, the library, much like other county departments, has had to adjust to pretty rapid increases in personnel cost growth in recent years. That's related to bargaining, COLA, PERS, healthcare cost impacts. In FY27, the overall labor cost increase that we're experiencing is about 5%, which is lower than it's been in kind of the years just coming out of the pandemic, for example, but it's still obviously higher than our revenues are forecasted to increase. Also, quite notably for this year, the library's combined internal service cost increases for FY27 were about 8%. That's well above normal for the library and much higher than our revenue growth. We've got a chart in a couple slides that'll kind of get into more detail on that, but our internal service cost increases are largely related to our bond investments. When you think about our expanded physical footprint, more technology, it's not a surprise that those internal service costs are increasing, but they've increased at a higher rate than it was initially anticipated at the beginning of the bond planning. And as Annie mentioned, they're arriving right at the same time that our revenue, our growth rate is decreasing. So I'll turn it over to Annie to talk us through the 5-year forecast.
Next slide, please. So this table that you're seeing summarizes the library's 5-year ongoing revenue and expense forecast. You can see in the forecasted $2 million deficit in fiscal year 27, the service level impacts that we're going to talk about in the library department presentation. The deficit is a little bit lower than what we shared with you in March. This is due to the Department of County Assets identifying an error in IT service charges, which has reduced our total expenses. so we've made that adjustment. At a high level, the deficit is driven by a slowing district property tax growth rate, as Katie described, and personnel and internal service costs growing faster than our revenues. Our internal service costs for facilities in particular are a major factor this year and next, as we have all of our library locations back online for the first time in 4 years, and then of course our new 95,000 square foot East County Library. The fiscal year 27 forecast is based on a continuation of the $1.22 levy rate, as Katie described, and we do anticipate raising that in FY28, although like Katie said, it's not foregone conclusion. We'll discuss that more in the FY28 budget development process. That 2-cent jump in the levy rate will generate about $2 million in additional revenue. This has been the pathway that we've modeled for the last several years, and as we shared, fiscal year 2027 is our first full year of post-bond operations, and we have a lot of learning to do over this next year as we experience the full operations of our new buildings. We are anticipating needing additional flexibility in FY28, particularly for IT costs, and to adjust to any future staffing needs as we fully staff our new buildings. In the forecast in this slide, you'll see that the line for additive ISR, or internal service rates, increase below top line revenue and expense totals. It's no surprise that these are changes to our operating costs as a result of major investments through the capital bond, and we're anticipating another year of higher than typical internal service cost growth before the rates level out. After the deficit is balanced in FY27, the forecast is back in surplus for FY28 and 29 due to the assumption of the increase in the levy rate. We will, as I said, reassess next year. Then in FY30, we tip into deficit again, and that's due to the PERS issue you've heard Jeff speak about, before bouncing slightly back into surplus due to the payoff of the PERS bonds sinking bond. If we carry that forecast out beyond FY31, based on our current assumptions, the structural operating deficit issues quickly carve away at the small surplus that we're going to see in 28 and 29. Next slide, please. This chart provides a high-level overview of current year property tax revenues for the district over time. The levy rate is noted by year as well, and the levy rate has been held steady since FY21 at $1.22. At a high level, the district's financial outlook is a challenging picture because of the local property tax trends you've heard Jeff discuss in great detail, as well as the same Measure 5 and Measure 50 constraints the county faces. Those will also apply to the library district property tax revenues, and the same local economic conditions are at play. We do expect another year of very slow growth in FY27, which is partially mitigated by returning the McAdam URA dollars. But combined with property tax growth rate is just about 4%, which is not sufficient to keep pace with the library's expense growth. Altogether, the underlying library district property tax growth rate has slowed significantly in the last several years, and you can see the flattening of the yellow trend line over the last 3 years or so. Next slide. This slide shows you another look at the same information, but it's showing you the year-over-year percent change in current year property tax collections. You can see an outlier in FY24 with the return of the interstate urban renewal area taxes to the rolls, but otherwise there's a pretty sharp drop-off in property tax revenue growth over the last 3-year period as compared to earlier years. Growth rates this low would be unable to keep pace with natural expense growth for the library, especially personnel costs. This timing, as we mentioned earlier, is particularly challenging as it coincides with our transition into our modern libraries and expansion. I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who's going to talk in more detail about our expense trends.
Thanks. Next slide, please. So on the expense side, employee personnel costs represent the biggest component of the library's operating budget, over approximately two-thirds of our operating budget. This chart just shows how the median budgeted wage for a library staff person has grown since FY22, so increasing about 32% during that time period. Generally speaking, that's a good thing for employees, for staff. Obviously, increasing cost of living and kind of keeping up with inflation is an important thing. But the challenge is that the library's revenue growth is not keeping pace with that wage growth. During that same period of time, underlying property tax experienced about a 26% growth rate, and that's a real sort of like direct expression of that structural operating deficit that we've been talking about. And for us, I think kind of highlights the the importance of the library's future staffing planning to prioritize staffing needs to meet staffing needs in our new larger locations, because adding significant net new staffing would really exacerbate this issue. Next slide, please. So this slide is a look at the library's IT and facilities internal service cost trends since FY22. As we talked about, our facilities internal service cost growth in particular has been pretty significant, incorporating estimates for increased operations and maintenance charges for our new locations, adjusting to increased janitorial costs, rising utility costs, things like that. With all of our library locations online in FY27, including the new East County Library, our total county facilities costs are going to increase by a little bit more than 14% over the current year. So it's a pretty big expense increase to kind of be organizing our FY27 budget around. Important to note, too, that those facilities costs are based off of a rate model that's looking backward at historical building costs. So for about half of our portfolio, these are estimates that are going to get more precise as time goes by. So we're expecting that these costs are going to fluctuate as we learn more and develop a new baseline for our brand new library buildings. So right now, these are based off of estimates for our brand new buildings. Our IT costs have grown less rapidly, but we're expecting those to have a longer tail for increasing, because those IT internal service rates are backward looking. So when we have East County Library online, Belmont, St. John's, and some of those devices that are in offline status right now, those will all get incorporated into our rates going into FY28. So that's why Annie was talking about expecting another internal service bump going into FY28, especially for IT. Right now, our estimates are that in addition to sort of typical cost increases for IT, we'll experience about $500,000 bump on top of that. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide shows the library district general fund totals for FY27, both resources and requirements. Putting it all together, the district has $122.7 million in total forecasted revenues as of the approved stage. $120.5 million of which is from property taxes and $2.2 million in other revenues. That matches with the $127 million total contract for the county for library services, so both our regular operating budget and the one-time only spending. In addition to that, the district has a contingency, an operating reserve, a set aside for future special project spending, and then a transfer to the district capital fund, which we'll talk about in a few slides. We'll talk about this in a lot more detail on the library department side, as we've said, but we did want to share these sort of like top line totals with you. Next slide, please. We also wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the district's total fund balance and kind of our approach to fund balance. Because in contrast to our slowing property tax revenues, the library fund balance has been growing during the last several years. While this fund balance grew pretty quickly during COVID, during the bond-related closures, when we had really high vacancies across the library department as a whole, we are expecting that fund balance growth to slow when all of our locations are back online, and then reverse in coming years as our budget tightens overall. And as you've heard us talk about in the last couple of years, we've enhanced our usage and planning for fund balance, and so I'll talk through a couple of those ways that we're doing that. On this chart in particular, we're looking at the library department's increase in usage of one-time spending in the library special projects program offer. And that use of fund balance has been part of our plan to help us navigate this kind of complex period of transition and transformation, and kind of more broadly to shift all of our one-time costs onto one-time resources. And on the next slide, we'll talk about the priorities that inform our use of fund balance overall. So here are our district fund balance priorities. The board adopted these fund balance priorities as part of the district financial and budget policies. Generally speaking, to try to increase the clarity and transparency about our plans for fund balance usage. As we move towards the adopted resolution, we'll bring forward the FY27 financial and budget policies, and you'll see that there are no changes to these fund balance priorities that we're suggesting for FY27. The top fund balance priority is ensuring that we have a sufficient operating reserve for the district. For FY27, that is set at $19 million. And then our other fund balance priorities include the categories that you're seeing here. So supporting bond adjacent needs and opportunities, maintaining buildings, physical infrastructure, and then innovation and evolution through pilot projects, programs, things like that. Next year, as the bond program closes out, we'll be obviously taking a look at these priorities and ask for the board's review in the future for the bond adjacent needs and opportunities aspect of this. And next year, as you'll see on the department side of our presentation, we are continuing that practice of using our fund balance in the library special projects program offer as part of our department budget with a total of $4.3 million. Next slide, please. We also make an effort as part of our district planning to sort of plan out our usage of library special projects in future years and kind of isolate that and plan for that within the library district budget. So this just shows you our plan for those special project spending in FY28 through FY31. Next slide, please. And then this moves us on to the library district capital fund budget. And so this is showing you the top line totals for the library district capital fund. Here you can see the transfer in from the library district general fund, as well as a $5 million return payment from the capital bond fund. That $5 million is comprised of resources that the district had previously sent to the library bond fund to shore up project funding gaps, but now that we're further along in the bond, it's clear that those resources are not going to be needed, so they're being returned to the library district. That $95 million in reserves in this fund is dedicated to support future infrastructure needs for the library and is going to be instrumental in supporting the long-term fiscal health for the district. And on the next slide, we'll share an update on our approach to thinking about our capital needs in general and kind of over the long term. So you all have seen this slide before. We shared it with you during our forecast presentation, I believe. So the majority of the library district fund balance sits in the district capital fund for long-term infrastructure needs. And as we discussed at that forecast presentation, we recently completed facilities condition assessments for a number of our non-bond buildings to understand the cost of maintaining those buildings out over the next couple of decades. And we can see that, kind of putting all this information together, that we're going to have to spend tens of millions of dollars in today's dollars to keep pace with our infrastructure needs, especially at Central Library. There's obviously spikes in different years as different building systems are predicted to need overhauls at different points in time. And that was more of a financial forecast. So right now we're working with an external consultant to make sure that we have a portfolio-wide look, including all of our bond projects. Because we do think that it might be a little bit of an underestimate of what those costs are going to be. And this reserve is ultimately going to be the long-term plan to make sure that we're taking care of those buildings into the future, because we can see that as that structural operating deficit starts to arise, our ability to maintain that pay-as-you-go funding for our capital needs is going to be harder and harder and harder to maintain. We've made really enormous investments in these new beautiful buildings, and so we want to make sure that we're taking care of them well into the future.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you have a chart or something that would show where our non-capital bond buildings are in the life cycle of the building? So like, do we have buildings that are like 45 years old and it's really a 50-year building? I'm just trying to get a sense of, I see it as a total, but I can't really see it as like, how close are they to either needing a full replace or a really significant versus just the ongoing cost of that building?
Yeah, that's something that we could definitely put together for you and kind of show you sort of like where it's at in its life cycle. Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to wrap up now. Next slide, please. So in just a moment, we're going to transition to our library department budget presentation. And again, like I said, we're going to share a lot more detail about library services and activities planned in FY27. But just want to summarize briefly, we continue to benefit from stable, dedicated funding stream, but the district, like the county, is seeing slowing revenue growth and escalating personnel costs that are going to drive our deficits in FY27 and beyond. We are focused really on continuing our efforts to drive down our cost curve, aligning resources to meet community priorities with an eye toward the long-term financial health of the district. We will continue to evaluate going into FY27 and assess our operating costs as we reopen all of our new library spaces in the coming year, and we'll be focusing on realigning resources to really maintain that service commitment to our community. I feel that we have really strong strategies in place to navigate this coming year, and we're also going to continue to assess our future plans and outlook as we get additional information. But I think today we're on a good path for future success. We welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you and understanding that we're going to be getting more into the library operations in the next presentation. Are there any questions on more of the financial pieces?
Thanks for that overview. I have some more just conceptual or general questions. Do the bonds, is the county allowed to bond for things like technology and swing spaces? For example, with school districts, you can bond for all of that, at least for you can bond for all the technology upgrades or new technology, and also for swing spaces as long as it's part of the larger capital projects. I'm curious, can the libraries do that?
Sure. So yes, on the technology piece, there were definitely like major components of the library bond that were technology, like upgraded internet, AV, all those types of things. In terms of the swing spaces, I don't know positively whether it's an eligible or ineligible. Certainly, like the library capital bond didn't anticipate those things, and especially early on when the project budgets were much tighter than they are, very early on in the project, the library made a decision to absorb those costs with one-time costs and kind of set up that process. But whether they're ineligible, I don't know the answer to that.
We can find out, or if Eric is here.
Yeah, it's just like, it seems like if we're using operating or other capital dollars that could be incorporated in the bond, then you've got this money for something else. And also the reason I asked about technology is I was also looking at the internal service rate, which I think includes some technology. And so it's like, are we being double charged? Like you're paying the internal service rates that has that, but then you could also use the capital bond?
The charges that we're seeing for IT internal service rates are not necessarily for capital, they're for the IT
support?
operations. Yeah, IT operations support. And so the reason that we're anticipating cost increases is because we are increasing the, get on up here, Eric. The metrics by which the IT allocates their costs. And so we're adding devices, for example. We have more public access computers. And so we are, all else equal, getting a higher share of IT's costs.
Okay. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, sorry. For the record, Eric Arano, Chief Financial Officer. I was kind of hesitating coming down or not, but decided to come down. I just think what I would add to this, and I think Katie answered it well, is that in terms of us, determining whether this is bond related versus just ongoing maintenance of facilities, it's really making that determination of what was on the ballot title that the voters approved that is new capital efforts versus now that something's been worked through a capitalization process that's now in operations. That's the point in time where it's no longer bond eligible, that point in time. But up until all the way through substantial completion of that capital project that the voters approved, the bond fund's completely allowable. And I think I may have captured it correctly, but I think you asked about the swing spaces. Yeah, I think it would be allowable as long as it's one of those items that is capital in nature in terms of the work that meets those thresholds. That would be allowable, but I can't speak to whether we actually did that and remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, just asking because it was actually called out. I didn't call it spring space, flex space or temp locations. And
What's a swing space? I don't know what that is.
a swing space is for, I'll just say from the context I ask it in. So for example, you're building a new high school, you move temporarily. Say you move Benson over to Marshall, they need CTE space. You can add in like new CTE space as part of the bond because it's all part of the bigger, larger capital projects. Usually the bond language is written so broadly that would include that. And then I'm assuming that swing space is just a different name for the flex space or temporary locations. And again, not using like precious capital dollars. If you could build it into the bond. And then, let's see. The internal services, is it correct that you paid the same internal service rate as everybody else?
That is correct. There's a sort of a universal county model that is used to distribute those costs.
Okay, and then, and this is maybe just another clarification piece. So we've had multiple, like lots of presentations that have had the asterisk like, and we need a rate, like we will need a rate increase at some point in time because of the structural deficit. And I want to say on one of these slides, it said this year or mid-year. Is that, no? Or,
I think what we're trying to flag is that we see the need, the potential need to make mid-year adjustments. That doesn't necessarily mean coming forward to request a rate increase, but more budget modifications than typical, or making sort of operational adjustments as we're kind of getting
okay,
used
because
to our
I
new
read it
spaces.
as a rate increase, but, so you're generally, when you have that in all your presentations, and it's great not to have surprises, so I appreciate that. But I read the other adjustments as a rate increase adjustment, but that's not, okay, great.
No, we'll be considering that as part of the FY28 budget development process.
Okay, I was going to wonder why,
Yeah.
if we were referencing it, there was something mid-year, why we weren't just doing it. Thank you.
I have a question, and this is more like a little bit longer term thinking, and if this is more appropriate for the next presentation, just let me know. But, we've been talking about for a while, like the unknowns with the new expenses, or the expenses for the new buildings on the capital plan. And, so FY27, really for the entirety of FY27, we're going to be operating under the new bond, or new capital like configuration because of the bond. When the planning for FY28 starts, we're not going to have the actuals yet for that year. And so, and it's really not going to be until like FY29 where we'll have like some good, months of data to do that. So what, like in thinking ahead for 28, how are you thinking about planning for the still uncertainty we're going to have in terms of the expenses for the buildings?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. What I would say, so one of the really good benefits of moving to the updated model for facilities internal service rates is that they are building specific, and they're meant to be sort of based off of building specific actuals month by month. So while we might not have a full year of actuals for East County Library or St. John's, for example, we should be able to get building specific actuals going backward from opening for multiple new locations, to give us enough information to say, what is it looking like across all of our new locations of a certain size type of thing, like enough to get a better estimate going forward. So you're right, it will still be a question mark until we have multiple years of actuals, but we'll have some better information in terms of actuals to base that off of.
Okay, great, thank you. We can move on to the next presentation.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll go ahead and bring up the department presentation. And we'll go to the next slide. So here's a quick look at our agenda for today. Today you're going to hear from the library's Community Budget Advisory Committee after we do some brief introductory slides. We'll also share a budget overview before we take a deeper look at the library's budget, some of our key outcomes, and a look at what's next for the library. Next slide. The library's long-term planning and resource allocation supports Multnomah County's overall mission and values. The library budget also supports the library's mission of empowering the community to learn and create. This approach centers the needs of historically marginalized communities and helps us to evolve our library services in an ongoing way. This includes providing culturally and linguistically relevant programming and collections, outstanding customer service in library buildings and through outreach, and offering diverse physical and digital resources. Next slide. So Multnomah County Library operates 19 locations, and we serve patrons across the entire county. We are very, very fortunate to have really strong community support for our libraries, and we have 369,000 active card holders. That's about, 369,000 card holders. That's about 43% of our community. In FY25, which is the most recent year-end fiscal year, we supported 2.2 million visits, and our circulation in that year was 17.6 million checkouts and renewals, which is pretty incredible. Next slide. These are the library's strategic plan goals, and they help us chart a path of change and growth that's focused on the needs of our community and addressing historic patterns of exclusion and injustice. At the same time, the library is planning over a long horizon, as we shared before, to ensure fiscal stability amidst escalating costs, expanding our spaces and new opportunities to serve our communities. Our strategic goals focus on expanding lifelong learning and improving outcomes for folks, adapting to our community's needs, bridging the digital divide, fostering welcoming and inclusive spaces, supporting democracy, ensuring a positive user experience, and collaborating to create adaptable library facilities. Later in the presentation, I will share an update on the library's next iteration of our strategic plan. At this time, I'd like to welcome members of our Community Budget Advisory Committee, also known as CBAC. Our CBAC is part of our Library Advisory Board, which works hard year-round with library leadership on strategy, policy, and budget. We're grateful for the time and commitment that our CBAC members, as well as their excellent questions and feedback on the budget as well. I'm now pleased to turn it over to Madison, and is David here?
David is online.
Oh, David is virtual. Okay, great.
Great, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Happy to be here. As Annie introduced, I am Madison Reithman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the members of the library's Community Budget Advisory Committee. If you would go to the next slide, I believe this is my, and then the one after that. So similar to how is structured across the entire county for all the departments, the library's Community Budget Advisory Committee serves as members of the community who both contribute to library operations through our tax dollars, but are also enthusiastic library patrons. And this has been a really exciting year to be a library patron and supporter with all of the new things and operations that the library has been investing in, and seeing this bond project really come to fruition and the results of all of the work that's been happening. So with that, as Annie and Katie have been talking about, there are also a lot of changes on the horizon, particularly given the financial outlook, as well as these new resources and locations that we have in the county. And so it has been a really interesting experience for us trying to look at the forecast that we've been talking about for the last several months as part of these meetings, and really deciding as users of the library, what our priorities are and how those align with those that the library has been talking about for a while. So as a little bit of background, we convene the library Budget Advisory Committee usually in the fall. The larger library advisory board, which looks over all library functions, not just the finance piece, that group does meet year-round, and so we are really year-round getting updates about how the library is operating and the financial outlook. And so this is a larger ongoing conversation, but for the purposes of the budget advisory process, we usually convene November, December, meet officially 4 times, and occasionally with emails and with additional conversations to really dig into the budget, with the result being our letter that we've provided to you and this presentation that you hear from us today. So with that, we have up here the full list of our library advisory board members, as well as the select few who have served on the finance committee. And then on there, we talk a little bit about the priorities for this year, which was really looking at these new spaces and figuring out how we can sustain them and make them the spaces that taxpayers approved via the bond, as well as balancing that with the long-term financial stability of the library, particularly given the financial impact or the financial outlook for the county. And then those larger goals, of course, are ensuring that those spaces are accessible and welcoming to all members of our community, and prioritizing, as always, the direct patron services that are provided out of these really great spaces. So with that, I'll ask you to flip to the next slide, and I will hand over to David, who is one of my co-members on this committee, who's going to dig into a little bit more of our feedback on the budget and our recommendations.
All right. Hi. For the record, I'm David Jarvis. I'm a member of the Library Advisory Board and the CBAC, and also in my day job, I work in the budget office, Portland Community College. At the start, I want to give a special shout out to Annie, Katie, and all the other great library leadership people who helped make this process easy. So I'm going to briefly go over some of our budget feedback. And we understand reductions are not fun for anyone, but we really appreciate the library's approach on trying to minimize the impact of any reductions on frontline personnel, and that the 2027 budget focuses on the library's identified key service priorities and their equitable service commitments. We also support maintaining the current levy rate for now, and then potentially looking at increasing it in the future year. And we also recognize that having all the libraries open, as amazing as they are, presents new challenges and opportunities. I will ask you to go to the next slide. And specifically, we support the proposed $2 million in deficit cost reductions and the associated staffing realignment in support of the following additional public service positions. These include reallocating staff to support an additional 3.5 FTE access service assistants at the sort center, adjusting security coverage for Central Library by reducing the overnight contract security while maintaining on-site security for critical hours, capturing the, I would say, significantly or substantially more than expected reduction in costs associated with reducing simultaneous ebook holds from 20 to 10, continuing to adjust the substitute staffing budget and implement cost tracking changes, and finally, reductions in materials and supplies expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
that's all we got.
Next slide. We would, yeah, if you
Should
wanted
we
to
ask
ask,
questions? If we have questions for.
please do,
CBAC?
yes, thank you.
Just
Yes,
so you don't have to stay for the next 40 slides.
yes.
Thank you for the work you all do. Quick question on the security coverage. Was that because was the recommendation primarily because of reduced need, or the need for budget reductions, and that seemed a natural place? I'm just wondering if it was like, hey, we don't feel like we need that much coverage, so we could reduce that, or we should recommend some reductions, and here's where we recommend it.
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll kick it over to Katie to talk about more. But this is something we talked about extensively in part of ours for these same questions, right? And I think what we ultimately landed on was that this adjusted model really reduced some of the duplication. You know, we actually were able to go through and look at like the number of calls or the number of incidents by day and by time of day and see where that need was most significant. And really with the security coverage, in addition to some of the new technology and the new other security protocols that have been put in place, some of that overnight coverage was really just determined to be duplicative, and based on the data we had available, just did not seem to be maybe the most valuable investment of our resources. So, you know, I think just to add on to that as well, I've been a part of this group for 3 years now, and one of the benefits of that kind of longevity is that we talk about these changes, and then as the year goes on, we get to say, okay, how did that change actually impact operations or impact the budget? Was that a good change? Should we revisit that next year? And I think this is going to be one of those, right? As we continue to, as the library continues to evaluate the security needs at various locations and the strategies that fit the library best for those, you know, I think we'll be looking at how that overnight security change impacts kind of the actual perception or reality of security at those locations. So, Katie, I don't know if you wanted to add any more detail about you guys' decision-making process on that, but.
Okay, and unless you wanted to add something. I was going to say, this looks like just a bullet point around a recommendation around reducing the overnight contracts. Was there a discussion in the Community Budget Advisory Committee about the amount of like daytime just on-site security and whether like looking at the incidents, like whether that was matched? Because again, this is something that's sort of shifted over time. So I'm just curious about whether that's something you all talked about.
Yes, and really these conversations about security and the best approach for them have been really forefront in the minds of a lot of our advisory committee members, just because it's something we're seeing in the news or in our experiences. And the library, given the kind of space it is, has these kind of really unique needs when it comes to security. So we did kind of talk about what is all encompassed in security, right? You know, because during the daytime when you have patrons actually there, the type of security you might need looks a little different than what you need overnight, right? And so we talked about what level is needed, but also what type of security or otherwise staff support for patrons and for visitors is necessary. So we did look at some of that balance. We've talked about that in addition with how the library supports some of that internally versus how that works with shared county security resources. And ultimately, the committee felt really good with kind of the middle ground that the library landed on in there.
Which is just the overnight.
Well, and Katie, do you want to go into a little more detail?
At least for your recommendation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Did you want to add something? Okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you for responding. And I'm glad that you all talked about it because, you know, it's forefront, I think, top of mind for many people in the community. So thanks for wrestling with it and providing a recommendation.
Okay. Oh, yep, go ahead.
No, I didn't know if you guys looked into the ongoing staffing and, you know, with our footprint expanding and how going forward the CBAC will be in, or the advisory committee will be involved in looking at what's working and what doesn't. Was that part of the conversation? I don't expect an answer to that because we're going to figure it out, but I just wondered what your guys' involvement and work plan is on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a great resource that the library put together kind of midway through this bond project and working even before that was the future staffing plan, which really took into account all of these factors from the bond project, from the evolving needs of the library, and from the services that the library provides, right? And how the staffing can kind of be optimized to be financially responsible in our financial situation, as well as meet the evolving needs of patrons and community members. So that future staffing plan was something that we got regular updates about and really dug into as a full library advisory board. So not just from the finance perspective, but from the operations as well, which was a really good roadmap for how we look at this. And as David mentioned, one of our priorities as advisory committee members was maximizing or preserving the patron-facing services, which is your staffing, right? As well as minimizing the impact that budget reductions would have on the staff of the library who make all the good stuff happen, right? And so that was a priority for us, and we'll continue to look at that future staffing plan and compare that with how it's being implemented at the library to ensure that those things align.
All right, thank you both so much for being here to represent the work of the Library Advisory Board and your dual role as CBACs. These recommendations are really helpful and important, so thank you.
Yep, I just want to add to that. Thank you, Madison, and thank you, David, and to the full CBAC. They dedicate a lot of time to this, and as you can tell, really care a lot about our library system, so I just really want to appreciate them for their time. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. And next slide. So now I'm going to spend some time talking about our budget approach for FY27. So for the development of the FY27 budget, we focused on 4 key areas to address our forecasted deficit. As you can see on this slide, we focused on our first priority, which was to plan to have all of our 19 locations open and operating on our new staffing models. This, again, like I said, is the first year that all libraries will have been open since FY23. We also approached this year's budget by evaluating prior year spending trends and trying to hold flat or reducing all non-personnel related costs where possible. We also evaluated our base budgets for opportunities to improve equity in the way that we provide our services. And we also are utilizing one-time funds to support the successful closeout of our bond projects and for other time-limited work. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see our reduction criteria that we utilized for identifying reductions. So despite focusing on limited non-personnel spending growth, those measures that I just shared didn't achieve a balanced budget. So we developed these additional criteria to do some targeted budget reductions to develop options that were really designed to avoid impacts to our service priorities and our equity goals. We evaluated these options through an equity lens and to an eye towards our long-term financial stability. You can see here the criteria we used. With, like I said, the highest priority is minimizing those service level impacts to our patrons, reallocating resources to meet our highest priority needs, aligning with our service statement and priorities, prioritizing safety and security, and avoiding reductions with negative impacts to communities in alignment with our equity values. And we're going to go, Katie will go in much more detail about those reduction options as we look in further slides. But first, I would like to introduce Ari Alberg, who is our equity analyst and who will be sharing more details about how we embed equity in the budget process.
Next slide, please. So hello, my name is Ari Alberg. Hi. I'm the library's conflict resolution and mediation analyst and a member of the library's equity team. Our formal equity program is now moving into its 11th year at the library. Having the equity program as a foundation of our work has allowed us to move beyond surface level changes and truly embed equity into the library's fabric. Our equity-focused decision-making is not only a conversation around budgeting, it's a part of our daily work. Managers use key equity questions such as who is impacted and how do we know to guide conversations and inform decision-making. We also use the budget equity tool as a part of our budget development, ensuring that we have equity-minded discussions and weigh budget decisions with community impact at the forefront. It's important that we gather information. It's important that we gather the information we have and listen to our staff and community to understand how something might impact equity. In addition to these tools and frameworks, we offer ongoing training. Library staff also have access to consultation and direct support from our equity team.
Thank you, Ari. Now I'm going to go to our next slide.
Before you go on, I just want to share, Ari has the cutest dog I've ever seen. I ran into Ari at the Tryon Creek, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such an adorable dog. You know, like, where'd you get it? Tell me about it. And then, you know, he's like, oh, and he's like, and by the way, I work at the county. I'm the equity director for the library. So I was like, oh, hi. So that was a great meeting.
Well, now I have to see your dog, Ari. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we shared our mission, we shared our strategic objectives, and now we're going to talk briefly about our service priorities. You've seen these before. I just want to remind you that these service priorities were developed early on as we went through our staffing plan, and they define the specific actions that we take to fulfill our library's mission. The core services are organized by priority in the following 4 areas. So we first focus on our library spaces and all of the amenities and services provided within those spaces. Next priority is information and referral services, which we provide online through our website and through our contact center. We also provide the third priority, which is our website and public access catalog. It's how a lot of folks interact with us to check out their books. And then the fourth priority is our programs and activities that support literacy and learning. So we use these service priorities to help guide resource allocation decisions and to prioritize our approach to our constraint budget. And I wanted to just kind of share just a very brief background on these. So the service priorities are very focused on our direct public service. And kind of one of the primary sources we actually looked to in developing these was the Oregon Revised Statutes defines the minimum conditions for public libraries in Oregon, sort of like what does it mean to be a public library and what do you have to provide. So these come from there, but they also come from the way that our patrons use our library, the way they tell us they want to use the library through our patron surveys and other usage analytics. So just a little bit of background on them. Ari's now going to talk about a little bit more in depth about how we live our equity priorities and what that looks like in our services.
Oh, next slide, please. And I was curious if you're going to remember that trail moment, so I feel really seen that came up here. For this slide, we apply the library's values in our approach to service delivery, and we maintain a strong, equitable service commitment across these priorities. At the foundation of our commitment to language and culture, we have budgeted 168 positions for staff with language and cultural knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs. We invest in staff with these skills because connection and representation is important for our patrons. These include our Black Cultural Library Advocate Program, Indigenous and LGBTQ+ programs, as well as language programs in Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Somali, and Vietnamese. Language access staff provide support for services and programs including virtual reference, contact center, translations, and the library website and the library service languages. Additionally, staff support language and cultural communities with events and outreach. In fiscal year 25, the library hosted over 2,400 events with attendance of almost 50,000 people. For library collections, we have culturally specific collection selector positions, the work to ensure our library collections are culturally attuned to the community they serve, so our patrons are able to see themselves in the materials we offer. For outreach, we are committed to meeting people where they are when they aren't able to come into our spaces. We do that through outreach to Donald E. Long Juvenile Detention Center, servicing homebound patrons, and serving folks who are houseless. For spaces, we have conducted extensive community outreach to ensure our libraries resonate deeply with the diverse communities we serve. For example, the design of Albina Library, which opened last summer, was informed by communities of focus. When you visit, you will see that the library space has artwork from local artists, a beautiful large conference room for community gathering, sensory room, and outdoor spaces. We also prioritize creating an inclusive environment by incorporating features like community-driven art installations, gender-neutral restrooms, and dedicated sensory spaces.
All right, next slide, please. I'm going to move on, and we've got a couple of budget overview slides. So right here, we're looking at the library operating budget. You can see that our top line total for FY27 is $127.1 million. That's inclusive of both our one-time and our ongoing spending. And it also includes a small amount of interdepartmental revenue from the sheriff's office that is on the library side, not on the district side, so that's why that number is slightly different than the district. Of that top line total, $122.8 million is our regular ongoing spending, which has increased in alignment with those revenue constraints that we shared on the district presentation. That total is going to increase a little bit further with the Library Foundation revenue amendments that you heard about yesterday. So the adopted year-over-year comparison is ultimately going to be a little bit higher than the 3.3% that you see here. Within the department total, $4.3 million is that one-time only spending that's reflected in the special projects program offer. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at a chart that shows library staffing and FTE trends going back to FY19. In general, our staffing levels have not fluctuated substantially in terms of total FTE, but we've tried at the bottom there to kind of call out some of our more significant changes over the years. In FY20, 21, we saw changes that were related to pandemic-era service realignment, so shifting services online, generally kind of managing through a challenging time for the library and the community. If you move forward to FY25, you can see a dip there where we eliminated a number of long-time vacant library safety liaison positions. We talked about this in the last couple of years as we shifted fully to contracted security. And then you can see in FY27 that our FTE total is 543.3, which represents zero change from the FY26 adopted budget, but once we add those 1.5 FTE that are funded by the Library Foundation, will be a little bit higher than that. And within that total of 543.3, we've realigned positions to make sure that we're adequately staffing for our new larger spaces, have coverage for managing the environment in our locations with the highest level of security coverage needs. Next slide, please. Here we're looking at a breakdown of the library budget by a major object category. And as is typical, our personnel costs are the major driver of library expenses and is just about 2/3 of our total budget. And internal services, you just heard us talk quite a bit about that. At almost $30 million, it's about 23.4% of our total budget for FY27. And contractual services is another area where we've seen larger increases as a percent of our total budget. It's still not a huge component of our total budget, but that represents our contracted security costs, driving that number a little bit higher year over year. Next slide, please. So now we'll shift into division-specific budgets. Next slide. The library has two divisions, Public Services and Department Administration. You can kind of see the breakdown in budget and FTE across these two divisions. The majority of budget and FTE is in our Public Services division as compared to Department Administration. And we'll talk through the details of kind of the year-over-year changes for these two divisions on the next couple slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so for Public Services Division, here we're looking at a year-over-year comparison for the Public Services Division, which comprises all library locations, so all 19 locations. It also includes our community services work and the integrated collection services work that we do, buying and moving all of the library materials across the system. And if you check out slide 45 in the appendix, you'll see a more detailed breakdown of the sort of work unit budgets within this division. If you were to do a straight year-over-year comparison, it looks like this division has been reduced by 7 FTE. That's a little bit misleading because we took one whole work unit called our Office of Project Management and moved it from Public Services over to Department Administration. So it's kind of making these two things look wonky in terms of a year-over-year comparison. On net, we're adding 2.5 FTE to the Public Services Division once you kind of take into account that transition of that work unit across divisional lines. A year-over-year comparison shows an increase of about 3.7 million or 4.2%. But as we've noted, that does not yet include the Library Foundation amendment, which is going to add about almost $1.4 million of additional expenses. And generally speaking, the same trends for the department as a whole that we've kind of talked through are true for this division as well. So personnel costs are really significant percentage of total divisional costs, almost 70%, increasing by about 5% year over year. And allocated internal services costs are increasing significantly for this division. And the cost increases that we're seeing for these two categories are broadly being offset by holding flat on our materials and services spending and on contracted services. And we'll talk more about the actual reductions that we've taken in a few slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a look at the Department Administration Division. You can see a more detailed breakdown of the units for this division on slide 44. And as I mentioned, the FTE swap here that we're seeing is just related to moving a work unit across divisional lines. If we net out those 8 FTE that were shifted, this division has actually seen a net decrease of 1.0 FTE over FY26. In terms of the year-over-year budget comparison, you can see that this division budget is essentially flat with last year, kind of looking just at the sort of regular operating budget and excluding those one-time only costs. We've made reductions in materials and supplies to help address cost increases, but really kind of the biggest thing going on here is that in FY26, we had some non-allocated personnel budget in our business services to help with labor contract cost increases, market rate bargaining cost increases that were held in the business services unit and then are allocated out more broadly in FY27. So that's directly offsetting the addition of that work unit into this division in FY27. So next up, we'll provide an overview of library department reallocations and reductions and kind of get into how we actually balance the FY27 budget. So as Annie mentioned, our FY27 budget planning focus on making sure that we are meeting the needs of our new staffing and operational plans, reallocating resources to meet high priority public services staffing needs. And we put forward a staffing reallocation package that's focused on maintaining and prioritizing patron-facing services, and specifically adding 3.5 FTE access services assistants in the sort center. We recently performed a time study at the Sort Center and determined that these entry-level public services positions are going to be critical to support the level of holds, sorting, materials movement, and processing functions that are happening in order to have that centralized floating collection that's happening at the operations center. And in order to offset and balance these position additions, we reduced administrative positions in HR, marketing communications, and then the Public Services Division Management program offer. Overall, it's a 1.5 net FTE increase for the library, but you can see that the cost is essentially net zero. We know that next year, as we continue to evaluate our staffing model for additional tweaks, we're going to see if this 3.5 access services assistant add is kind of meeting the need that we're seeing. This is one of those areas that we're going to continue to monitor going forward. Next slide, please. Okay, in addition to the staffing reallocations, the library department made $2 million in reductions to balance the FY27 budget. These reductions were assessed through the criteria that Annie outlined earlier. The first reduction that is included in our approved budget is related to the Security Operations Center and alarm monitoring reduction that we talked about, and that Madison just spoke about at some length. But our thinking on this has evolved a little bit based off of kind of what was in the chair's proposed and kind of some thinking that's happened around changes to patrols. And so I'll describe the reduction kind of first as is and then provide an update on our current direction. So what we had intended to do was to reduce overnight guard coverage at Central Library and kind of rely on the Security Operations Center and the fact that we've newly alarmed that building. But that would have saved about $330,000 a year. We had planned to have guard coverage in the mornings and evenings, kind of like help offset during the summer months. But with the change in overnight patrol, we've been kind of rethinking that, reassessing that. And at this point in time, what we're considering doing, we've been in a lot of conversations with Dorothy and Workplace Security about this, is taking the cost savings from the changes to workplace patrol, taking the cost savings that we had been intending to spend on those, like, pre-morning and after, like, evening sort of additional hours, and move forward with a library-specific overnight patrol that can help meet the needs of Central and some of our other highest priority locations. And so we're not making those changes right this moment because we're still kind of like in a lot of conversation, but the cost impact of both of those options is just about equal. And so that's what we're currently pursuing, is kind of that library-specific patrol option. And we think it's going to be just about the same level of cost savings. In terms of the other reductions that we use to balance the FY27 budget, they're a lot more straightforward, and I'll kind of run through those now at a high level. The second one that you see there is an ebook reduction to capture savings from FY26 reduction. So you might remember that last year we went from 20 to 10 simultaneous ebook holds. What we have seen in our monitoring of that is far more cost savings generated from that change than we initially anticipated. And so what this does is capture $350,000 in additional cost savings from the book budget that we can see that we're well on track for this year, from not making any additional service level changes, but just continued capturing of those cost savings. We are also sunsetting a mobile app exploration. So we had been exploring the feasibility of a patron mobile app. We'll continue to have the library website, being able to offer access to resources, and it's a sort of a fully mobile website, but we'll sunset the exploration of that mobile app. We've also made travel and training reductions that you can see there in the amount of $20,000. And across multiple program offers across pretty much the entirety of the library department budget, made materials and supplies reductions. Some portion of those supplies reductions will be added back via amendment. So the Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library amendments that you heard yesterday will add some of those resources back. We're also making reductions to the library's substitute staffing budget. So with the launch of our centralized substitute staffing team, we're seeing that we can update basically the way that we're budgeting for substitute staffing. We're going to centralize that and implement some improved cost tracking measures. And we think that we can achieve some cost savings there as well. And then the last item that you see there is a reduction to internal services, which is primarily related to sunsetting our use of a storage space through the Department of County Assets. So we put these reductions forward because we believe they'll have the least impact on service levels to patrons and kind of position ourselves best to move forward on our strategic goals. But obviously some of these reductions will have impacts on library patrons and staff, but by and large, we felt these were in best alignment with our overall criteria.
Thank you, Katie. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about the overall framework for our division outcomes and our key performance indicators for the library. So this framework aligns with the strategic plan, and many of our KPIs draw from our robust patron survey that's conducted every year. Today, I'm going to highlight a few of the outcome statements and performance indicators for both our public services and our administration divisions. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to go relatively quickly through this, because you can see on the slide, but a couple highlights around a feature that the public services division is dedicated to fostering lifelong learning, and a key outcome of which reflects the library's commitment to enhancing educational outcomes for individuals across all ages. And we've pulled out some of our KPIs that support this outcome, including from our 2024 patron survey, in addition to our Every Child a Reader program. The patron survey covers a range of topics for our patrons to respond to their level of service satisfaction at the library. And this particular measure is around supporting learning. And so 80% of respondents said that the library supports their learning. Additionally, we wanted to feature the Every Child a Reader program, which is also an indicator in the overall county strategic plan. I can talk more in depth about that program, but briefly, it's a program that delivers books out into the community through partnerships with Head Starts and home visiting programs. And so through the most recent survey with Every Child a Reader, families receiving the books at home report a 66% increase in reading at home. Next slide, please. The second outcome statement that we're featuring today is the goal of ensuring that our patrons experience respectful and welcoming spaces that reflect our diverse and multicultural community. As Ari shared, we offer a diverse array of services that are meant to respond to the diversity of our community and the cultural and linguistic needs that they have. In our most recent survey, 90% of survey respondents said that they feel welcome at the library. Additionally, we continue to expand our collections to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today I can report that 27% of our collections support diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a metric that comes from a vendor that we work with to analyze our collection that looks at the diversity of the collection by topic and author. Next slide. Now I'll talk about the Department Administration outcome statement. So a key outcome of Department Administration is that library patrons receive excellent, culturally responsive customer service from well-trained staff. Department Administration includes our Human Resources and Learning and Organizational Development team, who leads and conducts training for our library. So we pulled out our key performance indicators from this outcome that support this outcome. One is from the most recent patron survey, where 86% of library staff agree that they're able to provide the best quality service to the community. And then the second KPI is around the training that we provide for library staff around equity. So proud to say that the library offers mandatory equity training for all new employees, and 99% of staff have completed that training. Next slide. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how our budget delivers. So what impacts and outcomes do we see from our the resources that our community dedicates to supporting library services? In FY27, we are anticipating that we'll see 400,000 checkouts and renewals of materials in Chinese, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese, 60,000 phone, email, chat questions answered by library staff, $1.4 million devices using library Wi-Fi, and then 115,000 students participating in the Library Connect program. And then lastly, almost 19 million checkouts and renewals. You'll note that's an increase. We're seeing a steady increase as all of our locations come online and as digital access continues to be in high demand from our community. Next slide. So we're going to transition into talking about some key issues for the library that we're focused on in the coming year. Next slide.
Good afternoon, I'm Stephen Hauser. He, him pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of the library. To talk to you a little bit about security. As we've shared in several board briefings over the past year, a big challenge and ongoing area of focus for the library is supporting staff and patrons with access to safe library spaces that feel welcoming for everyone. This isn't unique to our library system. Many urban library systems are facing similar challenges. Multnomah County Library is one of our community's vital free public spaces, welcoming thousands of visitors each day. The library must balance access to library services with the need to maintain safety in its spaces. The library prioritizes security and safety and collaborates closely with county leaders, workplace security, the City of Portland, and PPB. Additionally, we address staff and patron security with several layers of support, including building design changes, safety training for staff, on-site security support, and 24/7 support from the executive management team. We are continuously working to enhance our overall safety response and refine our approach. Spending on security in FY27 is $4 million. This is double our spending of $2 million in FY19. In our FY27 budget, we are continuing our funding and focus on the continuation of library support for 2 peer support specialists at Central Library and a mental health support specialist, maintaining 5 guards every day at Central Library, which is an increase of 2 guards over the FY26 budget, de-escalation training support, connecting staff with county support, and implementing a new security incident reporting system. Next slide, please. Over the past year, we have concentrated on Central Library security, and we have taken a number of measures to enhance security there. Those details were shared in board briefings in August and October. Since that time, we continue to evaluate and implement new security measures, following through on our promise to the board and the community. This is not a comprehensive list of all security measures taken, but it does show the progress we've made since January 2026, as well as the work that is currently underway. A significant number of our location staff, 68%, are currently trained in de-escalation techniques, and this is one of the KPIs that we are tracking. Our FY27 target is 90%. This training and this work are vital to keep incidents from escalating to a critical status. We are continuing our focus and commitment to safety and security at Central Library. Some of our accomplishments this year include our vapor sensor test, which was successful. We are expanding that to all public restrooms at Central Library. In April, thanks to donations from the Library Foundation, we hosted an exterior space activation at Central Library in partnership with Downtown Clean and Safe. We've hired our new security manager and security analyst, and we have seen immediate support as their onboarding continues. On April 7th, Foresight Security conducted another security assessment of Central Library, following up on work they conducted in 2023. We look forward to seeing their report and their recommendations. We are also grateful that the county has allocated funds for continued 4D recovery, specialized outreach around Central Library. This has been a successful program, and we appreciate the collaboration with the health department to support this need. You'll see on the slide that we have listed this as in progress, but we have already implemented a pilot project that will give intercon officers the authority to exclude patrons both inside and outside the library. This pilot included in-depth training for the officers and library picks. A few things in progress. The library is in the process of updating library rules in order to better manage behavior in library spaces, and we will be communicating that information to the board after we have completed our legal review. And I want to complete this slide with a thank you to staff. We were thrilled to see our Central Library PIC team receive the Chair's Excellence Award during the recent employee recognition ceremony. And I just want to share my immense gratitude to our library staff, the hard work they do every day to make sure that we have safe and welcoming spaces.
Thank you, Stephen. Next slide, please. I'm going to go actually pretty quickly through this section because you all have received very frequent quarterly briefings around the capital bond, and I think a lot of this has been shared very recently. So I'm going to go relatively quickly. I do want to highlight on this slide that the library capital bond was based on the work that was done early in 2016, 2017 to produce the framework for future library spaces. And that had the goals of expanding destination libraries, creating a network model, increasing our library space per capita, improving equitable distribution of library space, and improving operational and financial sustainability. And I think we really realized those goals through this effort. And there's more work included in the framework, but I wanted to highlight that these major projects that we've conducted over the past 5 years have gone a long way to meeting those goals. Next slide. So just want to feature that, of course, we opened our East County Library on Saturday, huge milestone. We'll be celebrating the openings of St. John's and Belmont coming up, and that completes our major projects with the Library Capital Bond. Next slide. We, of course, can't go on without featuring East County Library. You've heard about it a lot in the last couple of days, but I just want to emphasize again for folks who didn't hear, we saw 14,000 people over the weekend of our opening celebration, so it's a huge community turnout, and it's been incredible to see the community appreciating this space. Next slide. A couple budget features for East County Library. So the East County Library has a total operating budget of $6.9 million with 38.5 FTE or 51 positions. That doesn't include the creative learning staff who manage the specialty spaces like the AV studio and the creative learning space. There's an additional about 5 staff dedicated to that. As we are gearing up to run this building, we'll learn more about the staffing needs and the operational needs of managing this building, and we anticipate planning for those in our, as we said, mid-year potential changes as well as FY28 budget planning. Next slide, please. Stephen's going to speak briefly about some of the operational improvements we've seen with the overall bond.
Thank you, Annie. We're seeing some positive initial trends with our automated materials handling sorting system. We've made the difficult reallocation decisions this year to fully staff the sort center team. Initial results are strong and highlight the efficiencies there. We're touching a book fewer times in order to fulfill holds or move materials to locations where they're needed. We've seen the number of touches decrease from between 8 and 11 down to between 5 and 7, which is 3.5 fewer touches per item. That adds up quickly considering that 6.5 million items moved through our central sort center last year. These smart systems mean that books move to locations where they are needed, which also contributes to reduced handling. And all this leads to patrons receiving their holds faster. This year, we will just now be able to understand the true impact of these systems. Next slide, please. Yeah? Okay. Next day. Appreciate it. We also want to provide an update on previous budget addition approved by the board, how it's fitting into our overall modernization plan for a new, larger library system. In 2023, the board approved a 1.0 FTE community partnerships manager position within the library, with the idea being to work with community partners to help activate library spaces and meet the needs of the community with our new spaces. In FY27, we merged this position and partnerships with the Community Engagement Work Group. This merger forms a team focused on building community connections and leveraging those connections to bring key services to the community. This change also enabled the library to reassign a manager position to become the East County Library Manager. We are using the countywide strategic plan framework to focus and prioritize the partnerships that we have pursued. We're excited to be developing partnerships with other county departments to support achieving countywide goals. One of those important partnerships that we're forming is with DCHS. We are developing 3 cross-departmental work groups with managers from the library and DCHS to focus on community engagement, strategy, and equity. We're also collaborating with DCHS to identify opportunities for connecting clients with resources in libraries and for ensuring library staff are knowledgeable about available resources for the community provided by DCHS. Library will also be partnering with reentry services and various public safety partners to offer community-based learning and support in library spaces. Additionally, we have several other community partnership programs that provide a wide range of services to the community, such as legal support, tax preparation support, and community education and engagement.
All right, we're almost there. We're going to transition into some strategy for the future. First, I want to share that in FY27, the library will be conducting a public-facing strategic plan effort. So we anticipate doing broad community engagement this fall and winter to help define and develop updated mission, vision, and values for the library, as well as revised goals that will guide our work in the coming 3 to 5 years. Additionally, we're looking ahead at our future capital needs. As I shared, the 2017 Framework for Future Library Spaces identified 4 goals that we've come a long way to realize, but there's more work to do. So the library is looking ahead at analyzing our current our accomplishments that we've made in the framework, updating that framework, and assessing current and future community needs and expectations. We also anticipate evaluating community support for ongoing investments in their library spaces. We anticipate having more information for the board in next fiscal year as we go through that effort to look to future capital planning needs. So on that, I'm going to go to the next slide. I want to conclude and just say that we are continuing to hear from our patrons that they love their libraries, and the community turnout is really showing, especially with our new spaces. We've seen some great results with our overall bond program, and also thanks to the excellent service our library staff provide. So we have a strong relationship and connection with our community, and really despite the economic challenges that we face, we're going to continue to find ways to grow and adapt to the community we serve. So I'll end with just sharing my gratitude to the support from this board and also to our staff for making our library system what it is.
So thank you so much for this very thorough presentation. And I know you have a lot of slides in your appendices as well. So that's great. We'll open it up to the board for questions for library team.
Yeah, just have a revenue question with the auditorium at East County, at the ECL. Could you share just the plans, the future plans around like ticketed events and how that may or may not impact just, I guess, revenue?
Yeah, so we are in the last final stages of legal review of our policy, and we do anticipate accepting or allowing nonprofit organizations to do ticketed events to support nonprofit. We will not allow sort of commercial use or private entities to do ticketed events. The library, of course, will continue to offer free events for our community. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you all. I just wanted to follow up a little bit from our conversation last year about some of the community programs and particularly some of the culturally specific programs for kids that you all had, and the decision was to move away from those because there was other similar programs in the community. It was School Corps, Books to You, and Listos that we talked about. Just curious what you've seen did what we thought happened play out? Are folks still getting the access that they need? Is there something we should be thinking about coming back to any of those programs in this budget or in future budgets?
Yeah, so I think, we did reduce, as you noted, some of our outreach services. We continue to offer very robust culturally specific services within our library spaces, including story times in multiple languages. And so that continues to meet some of the need. I would say, too, our Every Child a Reader program has continued thanks to the support of our Library Foundation, which reaches thousands of children out in our community. And that program has continued and really has seen a steady growth as we've recovered from the pandemic and as, Head Start organizations, home visiting programs ramp up that in-person engagement with students. So I think that, and then also I will say that the position that we dedicated to focus, we realigned you may recall, our youth development team, and we have positions dedicated, one to teens, one to school-age youth, and one to early childhood. They've been very successful at really identifying the highest priority needs to serve educators. So we're continuing to offer educator services, as well as our very popular tutoring program, and then our robust Teen Council and Teen Connected Learning programs for our community. So I think I would love to be able to continue to offer the programs we offered more robustly previously, but I am proud of our staff for adapting and really honing in on how to deliver and to continue to support educators in our community.
Great, thank you so much.
How do you look at and assess the need for various KSAs, and how is that periodically adjusted as our community changes?
That is a wonderful question. We're actually, so focused on that now. So in terms of determining language and cultural KSAs, so we recently, I think last year you may have heard us speak about the work we did with Portland State University to develop a data set that allows us to see library user base using each library location overlaid with American Community Survey data that helps us better understand language and racial groups that are using library locations. That data helps us, but it also doesn't provide disaggregated data for all populations that we're serving. So we can look at that data. We also have our library staff who provide insight, and managers who provide insight into the populations that are coming and utilizing those libraries. And so we, our program, or library administrators help to identify sort of what they're seeing within the location to be able to propose KSAs or changes to KSAs and positions. So I would say it's a combination of looking at population data, usage data, and then qualitative input from our location leaders through our staff, and with staff input.
Okay, I'm just, for the presentation, I'm just gonna start with, I love this slide because this is the feedback I get from everybody in the community about the new libraries. They love the old libraries too, but the new ones are even better. So just great job to the whole team for providing those services in every community. And I've tried to go to all the library openings. And what I'm really struck by is that they appear to be very reflective of the neighborhood versus just like one segment of the neighborhood. And I think it appears to be partly because of like the diversity of the staff, the diversity of the collections. So I love all that. So thank you. I had a question, this is overarching. You had some metrics in here about like the number of materials checked out. Can you provide, I don't need this obviously today, but just generally, we track visitors by branch. Could I just get like a, pre-pandemic to now and like maybe disaggregated if that's easy to do? I'm just interested in the trends and also like what impacts like new branches and understanding that when libraries branches have gone down, that changes circulation, but I'm just interested in looking at the data.
We can provide that for you.
Great. I had a question. There was data on your span of control in the appendix. And I'm noticing that generally it was, the numbers were higher, or there was a larger span of control. It looks like at the branch or lower levels, but the admin was, I think, at 1 to 5, or 1 to 5 point something. And then I'm noticing that on slide, I think it's 22, it's very light, there is an increase in the administrative, looks like the administrative budget. Am I reading that wrong?
Katie can explain it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So let me also get up my notes so I'm saying it right. But if you're looking at the increase in like the department administration FTE.
It's this one right here.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So one of the things that's happening in the background is that we moved our Office of Project Management and Evaluation as 8 FTE. They were reporting to Stephen, now they're reporting to Andy. So functionally, we move them across a division line, even though it's just 8 FTE.
So it's not a new ad, it's just a.
Yeah.
So the columns would look different than.
Yeah, and so I have it, I think it was, give me 1 second, I can tell you what the net is without that. It's going down, I think, by 1.5 FTE. Give me 1 second, I can give that to you.
Okay.
If you were to net that out, what the impact is.
Okay, so it's a shift around versus a new.
Right.
So then my other question, this is just a structural question. Where do all is the bond project teams, are they divided between DCA and some library? Or is it all in DCA?
The Program Management Office reports up through DCA. There's a bond deputy director position that reports through the library, but is funded by the bond, as well as a communications manager that reports up through that deputy. So there are three positions that report through the library department, and then the rest is through the Program Management Office and DCA.
So as the bond program winds down, the impact would be more on the DCA versus library. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Then, I love the partnership with the school districts and just community members. It's great to see the integration. A question on slide 31 about the security. I know I asked questions before. There's a couple things that are noted as in progress. Delegation exclusion authority for intercon officers, implementing incident reporting software and updated library rules. Can I get and exclusion guidelines, can I get the targeted implementation date? I don't have to have it right now, but just as a follow-up.
One thing I think Stephen noted is that since this slide was submitted and now we've now implemented the exclusion authority delegation, they're piloting right now at Central.
Okay. It would just be great to get on the other ones. And I am wondering, so there was a lot of activity, was it last summer, around security? Is that cross-functional team, I think it was with the city, with libraries, with the chair's office, is that team still meeting at all? Or is it like that was more of a strike force team and like now we have put things in place and it's more episodic, or?
Yeah, so we all met, and we met throughout the fall and winter, and then I can't remember which month, I would have to go back and look, made the decision to transition to ad hoc so that we would convene as needed when issues arise. I will say that we continue, though, to be in communication, so that, in fact, I was just in communication with PPB last week around opportunities for collaboration around training. So I think the benefit of that group was to create those ongoing relationships so that we have really clear lines of communication and collaboration.
Great. And thank you for sharing your staff retention on diverse workforce. And then I guess the only follow-up, and I don't need this now, but just if there's any explanation about the lower number on the span of control in admin. Thanks.
Okay, doesn't sound like there are any other questions. So thank you all so much for the presentation on all the great work happening at the library and the planning for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Our next budget work session is on the Communications Office. So we will invite them to come back up. And we'll say that Julie Sullivan-Spingretti always made us cry during her Communications Office presentation, so we will see if that will hold true for this year. Okay.
My favorite is this one's all pictures and GR was all words.
Yeah. Yeah. I welcome Dennis Thrall, the interim communications director, to Great, welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. Chair Vega Peterson, commissioners, thank you for having me today. Thank you for our budget office, Christian Elkin, Aaron Russell, for all your support. For the record, my name is Dennis Thralt. I use he, him pronouns, and I am serving as your interim communications director. And I'm here with the rest of our team, all behind me, to seek your support for our fiscal year 2027 budget.
And some back there, too.
Next slide, please. I want to start this presentation last September. It's less than a year ago but I think for way too many of us, it feels like it was decades. Why am I choosing September? Well, that's when we had our first clear word that Donald Trump was planning to unleash his ire on Portland and Multnomah County once again. Threats of putting soldiers on our streets, threats to jail our immigrant neighbors, our neighbors of color, threats made for no other reason than because of who people are, what they look like, and where they came from. Threats that became very real for hundreds of our families and neighbors in the weeks to come. Next slide. And then came a government shutdown that starved our community's safety net. The shutdown added to the terror that too many of our neighbors were already experiencing. But in the face of this bellicose injustice, Multnomah County stood firm and we stood fast. We spoke up and joined lawsuits. We raised food for those going hungry. We put dollars into the community to keep people housed. We even adjusted the very basics of our work to keep our clients as safe as possible. Next slide, please. At one of the most consequential moments Multnomah County has ever faced, the communications office was right there. We wrote press releases and helped with talking points and statements. We spent hours in meetings with our peers across the nation, but in the midst of that, we built something that endures today. In close partnership with our communications colleagues and subject matter experts from across the county, from the health department to county human services to emergency management and more, we launched a new website, multco.us/federal. Next slide, please. Our Federal Impacts website serves as a central clearinghouse for resources, information, guidance, and more for the thousands of neighbors left reeling and worse in the wake of federal cruelty. This living document is in 7 languages, a first for a new county website, and we are working with the health department right now to pressure test all these translations to make sure the site remains a resource for our community. Next slide. This was natural work for Jessica Morkert Shibley, who serves as one of our spokespeople for the Department of County Human Services. Jess notes that no, she most certainly did not do this work alone, but she did help keep it marching forward, both in the moment and now as things have grown quieter. Jess leveraged the relationships she's built within DCHS, the same relationships that help her land a vast array of positive stories in local media. Last summer, this is one example, Jess helped a TV station tell the story of a young man with cerebral palsy who left the streets for an apartment in Gresham. That's not all Jess does. When she's not supporting DCHS, she's helping support our social media accounts, and she's churning out release after release for our elections division. Last night, I might say, was a big moment for her. She stayed quite late at elections and coordinated TV interviews with all 4 stations to help Tim Scott get his support that he needed. Next slide, please. Jess has a new running mate at DCHS, Alicia Mendez. Alicia supports our Youth and Family Services division, and she also serves as our lead bilingual communications coordinator. When we needed a quick Spanish translation for our evolving federal website, we waited a long time for some of the other languages to come back from the translators. Alicia was there making sure we had Spanish language information very quickly and very directly. She does the same with one-pagers across the county, with press releases, and even with voiceovers for countywide emergency alerts. Alicia continues to make it her mission to reach our Spanish language community, a job that's actually getting more difficult as our Spanish language news outlets continue to fade away. Alicia supports the remainder of those outlets by doing interviews in Spanish when needed because it's important that we reach people where they are in the languages they speak. Next slide, please. Alicia also manages Condado de Multnomah on Facebook, the county's only social media platform for Spanish speakers. Just the other week, I was watching her at her desk. She was translating these Preschool for All ads and other things to ensure crucial application information reached those who needed it most. She does this, and this is a theme here, while wearing yet another important hat. She also serves as a spokesperson and trusted crisis communications advisor for Multnomah County Animal Services. Next slide, please.
I'm gonna shout out do that every time.
Thank you. So our team serves during capital H historic moments. We're also ready to serve at the drop of a hat at any time an emergency or disaster strikes. Our team remains the regional lead in emergency preparedness, from earthquakes to heat to cold to wildfires. Year after year, our team has stepped up to help save lives, developing key messages, working with our media partners, and coordinating with internal partners and community organizations to make sure we're sharing safety information in multiple languages. Next slide, please. You're familiar with Help for When It's Hot and Care for When It's Cold, our 2 main resource pages. This year, we're working with Health and Emergency Management right now to populate the 3rd page, Stay Safe During Smoke and Wildfire Season. I couldn't get it in time for these slides. I had to get these in last week, but as of today, Moltco.us/smoke is live and available, so if folks go to that website, you can see the bones of what we're doing there. Not long ago, on May 4th, we actually had a dry run for the summer to come. We hit 90 degrees on a recent Sunday and set a very unusual and very forebodingly early record high. But by the time the first planning call was set a few days before, Sarah Dean, our lead health department PIO, had already updated her website, had already started a media statement, and was already huddling with health experts to help manage press inquiries. It's a role she's embraced in the past year, taking over as co-chair of our region's disaster preparedness organization. Her work on heat came a couple of days after she sat through a tabletop exercise on toxic air. Next slide, please. Sarah juggles these moments with an already mammoth job supporting the health department. Just in the last few months, Sarah managed sensitive inquiries around complex subjects including civil commitments in the wake of the Mac attack, changes to ambulance services, reviews of our employees' use of gift cards, turmoil in our community health center board, an ongoing measles outbreak, and very recently, questions about hantavirus and whooping cough. Measles, you see here, Sarah supported an Ask Me Anything post on Reddit, which is something we did a year ago for Preschool for All. It's a good strategy. And I want to note that for another year, Sarah also presided over the rollout of her Domicile Unknown report. Once more, she personally interviewed families about the heartbreaking loss of loved ones on our streets. Next slide, please. The health department, of course, hardly has a monopoly on our media interest. Media interest in the county, which is, in most cases, very healthy, very vital scrutiny, remains exponentially higher now than a decade ago. As I said last year when I was here with Julie, we shouldn't be surprised by that. If there's a surprise, it's that it wasn't happening all along, given our critical work and how much it intersects with the crises of our times. Next slide, please. If you count every story we worked on with a reporter, every story published about Multnomah County, and all of the stories, released, and posts that our teams draft for Moltco.us, we went from 375 in 2016, to more than 3,100 today in 2026. I will note this is the first time in a few years that we actually saw a slight decline. I do have a theory. This was the first winter since 2020 where we didn't actually have a single day of cold weather response, and we actually only saw a few days of cooling center activation last summer. Those typically drive coverage, but the pace of our work remains the same, I would say, based on this chart.
I think it's we're working so well, we're becoming boring.
I was going to say.
There we go.
I think it's
Or there's more attention given to the other side of the river, right?
Hey, if Portland is taking some of the spotlight,
that's through the headlines. I think that's right.
that works for me.
Together. Go team, go.
Next slide, please. At least most outlets are still covering homeless services, even if they walk back county beat coverage, except for the Oregonian. And that means there's been no shortage of work for Julia Combs, who covers homeless services and the supportive housing services measure. Julia's specialty, one of them, is building earnest and positive relationships with the journalists she works with. Those relationships do not mean that reporters will not hold us accountable. They do mean that stories are accurate, and they do mean that stories include our point of view, even when those stories very necessarily are critical of our work. That's very important for homeless services, which for years saw fair game concerns sometimes whipped into politically motivated misinformation. Julia's steady work has turned the tide, snuffing out casual and sometimes inaccurate jabs in the bottom thirds of stories aimed at issues like data, underspending, and outcomes. Next slide, please. Julia also plays offense. She works to share stories about the neighbors our services support. Some of those stories can make even the flintiest reader or viewer cry. Last year, Julia wrote about a woman named April who was receiving recovery services and now thriving in supportive housing after 10 years of experiencing homelessness. Julia wrote that it was April's love for her dog, Samson, that helped her make a change. April told Julia that she'd promised Samson that she'd get him an apartment, but April said, "It didn't even click for me that I deserve an apartment too." Next slide, please. If Homeless Services has a spiritual sibling in our communications work, I would say it's Preschool for All. Both programs draw from a voter-approved tax, both have received intense scrutiny, and both have made some strides shaking off their startup headlines, and both have had a champion on our team. For Preschool for All, that champion, I will say, has been Ryan Yambra. More to that later. Next slide, please. Is that Ryan? Ryan also wears a few other hats, juggling the Department of Community Justice, our Behavioral Health Division, and our Sobering Center and Deflection Program. But preschool is where Ryan has distinguished himself. In a year where Preschool for All faced political and policy-focused scrutiny, while also making leaps and bounds to reach more than 7,000 seats, Ryan has fought hard to keep setting the record straight. He worked with the chair's office and other teams to help land crucial media stories that offered accurate context around what's really happening with the program, not just around its economics, but also its successes. Next slide, please. At the same time, Ryan built a bank of parents and providers who are willing to talk about a program that's changing lives and making our community more affordable. What could have been a critical coin story last winter, rehashing some old headlines, actually had some notes of positivity. One young family said they were grappling with whether to leave Portland in the wake of a layoff, not because of the tax rate they were paying, but because it simply would have been too expensive for them to stay here. Instead, that family got a spot in Preschool for All, and they told KOIN that meant they could actually afford to stay in the community they love. I'm also proud to note that we have a new teammate on board just in time to really help drive home the impact of this work. Thanks to this board, Alex Hosenstab started May 12th as our very first full-time Preschool for All communications coordinator. That is great news for Preschool for All. It's good for the county, and it's also because it's good news for Ryan. It means Ryan can actually focus on his other work, especially work communicating about our deflection program and our new long-term sobering center. Those are huge county priorities, and I'm glad that he's going to have more bandwidth to help tell those stories going forward. Next slide, please. We celebrate stories about our neighbors and the programs that support them. The communications office also tells stories about bricks, mortar, and steel. On October 13th, the Broadway Bridge closed to all motor vehicle traffic for 6 months. That was enormous news affecting thousands of our neighbors. It's pretty reasonable to guess that nobody was thrilled, but thanks to Sarah Hurwitz, our transportation PIO, no one was surprised either. Just like she does dozens of times a year when weather or some other incident shuts down a rural road or bridge, Sarah worked with our partners in our bridge division to get the word out very early and very clearly. A short, compelling video, just one example, told drivers well before the closure what was happening and when and why. It stood out as another example of a very good way to spread the news. Next slide, please. I'm loving this, y'all. Sarah endured a major pivot this past fiscal year when it became clear we would go blue in the face, waiting for the new federal administration to fund our earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge project. But Sarah and the transportation team, they saw an opportunity in the midst of that gloom. For months, she's been helping lead a centennial bash for the bridge on May 30th. It's a chance to celebrate history and focus on positive energy downtown with some of the same musical acts that you might actually see at the Blues Festival. More important, it's another chance to positively highlight the Burnside Bridge as a key lifeline. And by having people on that bridge, I think there's going to be a shaking demonstration of what it's going to be like to be in an earthquake. We're going to very viscerally tell people why we need the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge project. Yeah. So. A little bit of reality with the party. It's okay. Next slide, please. Yeah, no. Sarah's care and attention spreads far beyond the west side, I should add. From the Stark Street Bridge to Sandy Boulevard to Southwest 257th and Troutdale, Sarah has brought a very steady diet of media and policy attention to East Portland and East Multnomah County. This is part of the communications team's mission to showcase every part of Multnomah County and to live the credo of one county. Next slide, please. One county is something we live and breathe inside the bureaucracy too. Shannon Coyle, while simultaneously stocking, I believe, the best candy jar on the 6th floor, dragged, pulled, and pushed every county department and office onto our new GovQA public record system this past year. And she didn't stop there. Shannon created an operations manual, standardized practices across the county. She brought in the state's public records advocate for the first ever countywide training on public records. She worked with the budget office to develop our very first unified fee schedule for public records. And right now, the county's first ever online payment system for public records is moving through the pilot stage, thanks to a partnership with the CFO's office and the sheriff's office. Next slide, please. Crucial for sustaining this work, Shannon created a community of practice for records custodians called the Public Records Working Group. They meet together regularly. In fact, we actually met this afternoon before this meeting. And in between those meetings, they share tips, tricks, and questions on an email group. There's even a new comments page shown here to contain some of these resources. In all, custodians across the county worked through 8,125 public records requests in GovQA as they joined the platform in various points in 2025. This year, with all departments active, that number through mid-May is already at 3965. And for our team alone, communications, we handle a fraction of those. But from March 2025 through mid-May, our team has worked 277 requests, typically mostly from the media, but it's about an average of 19 a month. And I want to say Shannon has more in store for us in the coming year. She's going to work to refresh a few more county policies, including a new fee waiver policy. And she's working closely with our budget office and our attorney's office to work on that. Our goal, I should say, is to have Multnomah County be the best in state when it comes to public records and transparency. Next slide. Next slide, please. One County is also about the culture of our organization and how we communicate with one another. Almost every all-staff message this year, from hires to celebrations to updates about federal actions and the harms they're causing, has borne the sensitive touch of Paul Park, our internal communications specialist. Paul was a key architect of our federal impacts website, and he's been an author and advisor on much of the guidance we've shared with our staff. Most recently, you can see the screen grab here, he helped build a newly launched training module for employees, and I will say we've also worked to get that very recently launched into a Spanish translation too, to make sure we reach more of our employees. Next slide, please. Paul infuses that spirit into all of his work at the county. When the Office of Diversity and Equity needed support with an ambitious video series about the Workforce Equity Strategic Plan, Paul stepped up as project manager. He does that while still serving as our team's most eagle-eyed editor, putting eyes and a few different marks on every piece of writing we put out. And he's doing that while working across the enterprise as a thought partner and editor on reports, papers, campaigns, and other needs from departments and offices big and small. Time and again, people have told me, and I also agree with this, Paul makes hard things seem easy. His calm thoughtfulness is essential for supporting our county's change management initiatives, including our shared services project. Next slide, please. I also want to be clear, Paul has company right on our own team when it comes to communicating with coworkers. 50 weeks out of 52, year after year, Andrea Coughlin, our longest-serving team member, she curates, edits, and designs the Wednesday Wire. This weekly newsletter serves as a virtual water cooler for our nearly 6,000 employees. We learn about the county's good work, we meet our new leaders, we learn how to sign up for benefits and classes, we get book recommendations, we even find our forever pets. Andrea is also expert at identifying and navigating sensitive issues around identity, culture, and our nation's social climate. She pays close attention to how these topics are portrayed in the submissions she receives. She not only spots concerns, but she coaches our staff gently towards collaborative solutions that avoid alienating colleagues who belong to historically marginalized communities. Next slide, please. Every 3 months, Andrea does a version of this work for the rest of the community. Compiling the most relevant county news stories and releases, she assembles an external newsletter called the Multco Message. It's another way to share the county's progress and challenges with the people we serve. Newsletters are measured by their open rates, and in the last year, the open rate for Multco Message has grown from 33% to 48%. According to MailChimp, our chosen platform, all nonprofits generally average about 40%. And across all industries, that open rate is 36%, so we are well above those benchmarks. She's with us watching. Next slide, please. Internal or external, none of our work would resonate if our products didn't look good and sound good. Jason Rutherford is now our lone videographer in communications after Mark Baker retired and his former position was eliminated. Jason is now single-handedly surfing waves of video requests from across the organization, almost all of them seen as urgent. From the state of the county, which we just went through yesterday, 4 out of the 5 videos were Jason's, to our WESP series, to our charter review committee recruitment work, to press conferences and public events, to YouTube uploads of public meetings, to going out to shelters to capture B-roll so reporters can use that footage, Jason has delivered time and again. Next slide, please. I will flag that this time has come at a cost. To accommodate these important projects without Mark to share the workload, Jason has had less opportunity to tell the human-centered stories he specializes in as a former news photographer. These aren't vanity projects, they're the best and most resonant way to show the impact our services make in this community. I will say because we had vacancies this year, we had resources to patch things through with freelance support, but with those vacancies now filled, we will have to carefully budget for external support in the coming year. Next slide, please. The last of those vacancies actually has just been filled, in fact. Thanks to this board, we created a role for the county's first ever branding and marketing coordinator. And just this week, we officially hired Christian Anachette to tackle this work. He will start in June. I am so eager to support Christian as he works not just with our team's creative professionals, but with communication staff across the entire county. Part of his mission will be to better leverage and unify the capacity and resources we can muster from across the organization. And his work will remain essential for ensuring people know about our services and how we can connect people to them. Next slide, please. You can see here that even without this work, we have continued to build our audience. Year over year, we are up 13% on Instagram, which plays well with our ability to produce quality visual stories. We've seen similar growth on Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky. X, different, we're not there as much. A lot of people are leaving, there's good reason for that. We are there in an emergency, I will say, it remains available to us. And again, we've done this in a year without the kind of weather emergencies that usually entice folks to follow us and then stick around for the good news. Next slide, please. We have a few more not-so-secret weapons making sure that our work looks good. County graphic designer Janet Juan Torres and photographer Matoya Nakamura. Janet remains Central Communications' only designer. And so far this fiscal year, she has crafted 223 graphics all on her own. When the homelessness response system needed a very complicated, detailed graphic to show the pathways people seek from the streets to apartments, including which jurisdiction works on which parts, a lot of back and forth on this one. This is one example. It's up there now. It's just, you know, and she took that on and worked with Jillian. It was really good. Yeah. Next slide, please. When we opened cooling centers last summer, Janet worked her usual magic, preparing maps and flyers and new graphics in English and Spanish. And most recently, when the chair's office asked if we had a new backdrop for press conferences for the budget announcement, Janet was ready. In fact, she'd already been designing options before the ask came and was already getting price quotes. She didn't even know the ask was coming. Moreover, Janet has been designing our new firearm safety signs. She's going to help design our sanctuary signage. She also designed most of the county's most scrutinized public reports, including Domicile Unknown and the Homelessness Response Action Plan. She also helped with the voters pamphlet this year, something that went to tens of thousands of households this month. Overall, she helped with 12 different reports totaling 423 pages. And all throughout, Janet advises graphic designers across the county, including leading a very first ever countywide training on InDesign, and she remains the steward of Multnomah County Style Guide. Next slide, please.
We have a style guide?
We do. Hayden has it, yeah.
Nice job.
Anticipation, see? And then last but never ever least, there's Matoya. Matoya has taken 121,795 pictures this year. That's despite missing like 7 weeks with an injury in the fall. That includes most of the photos you see in this presentation. I think Matt McNally had the first one. And this one is Sarah Hurwitz. She took the shot of Matoya last month, a very rare image of the photographer about to perform his craft. Next slide, please. Matoya lives in the field, it feels like. His images honor county staff and county services, showing our presence and our impact in the community. Next slide. Next slide. Matoya captures moments of joy, like our proclamations. Next slide. Next slide. He also captures the news of record, even when it's difficult. Next slide. And next slide. He's also our very own county portrait photographer. Sorry, Sarah, you weren't just the most recent, you were the best, let's just say. Let me be clear. Matoya is in such high demand that he feels like he builds a studio in the boardroom every few weeks to do these portraits, and people line up for them. He often has to turn people away for the next session. Next slide, please. Matoya's photos continue to be available as public records on our free downloadable Flickr account, and as local news outlets continue to shed full-time photographers, that repository of images ensures our most striking work reaches readers and viewers across multiple media channels. These photos also help amplify the work of our partners and contractors. They are critical to communicating what the county and this board are all about. Next slide. These photos also populate the 22 dynamic web pages we maintain, including our homepage, moldco.us. While departments manage the static web pages that list things like clinic hours, we are constantly updating our homepage and our other pages to meet the day's news. Next slide. As you can see, our proposed office budget to do all this work and more in fiscal 27 is $3.66 million, almost entirely provided by the general fund. Next slide. Here's another way to look at it year over year. This shows our budget increasing slightly, cost of living, other things, even as our FTE count stays the same year over year. Next slide. I will note that we continue to operate with a reduced supply budget, pays for things like cameras, hard drives, podium deliveries to press conferences, placards at press conferences, and other supports for departments. But our budget is overwhelmingly invested in personnel, the colleagues I just spent the last several minutes talking about. Next slide. So this is the 5-year trend in hiring for our office. The fiscal 27 proposed budget maintains staffing levels the board approved last year, including Alex, our new preschool coordinator, and Christian, our new marketing coordinator. All but 2 of our positions are paid directly by the general fund. Alex's position is funded through Preschool for All, and this one isn't obvious because of budget nuance that I think Christian would be way better at explaining. But Sarah Hurwitz and our team is funded through the transportation division. Next slide, please. And one more time, here are the lovely team members sitting behind me here, most of them. We are finally days away from fielding a full team after a year of serious transition. With an interim director and no deputy, and with so many emergencies and so much unprecedented news this year, this team has simply stretched itself to its limits to balance our responsive work with the proactive stories that bend narratives and uplift all the good things Multnomah County does. The county's impact and portfolio are bigger than ever, and our community needs this team refreshed and ready to lead the way. I will also say something personal. As the interim director of this office, and as the deputy director for years before it, I cannot express what an honor and privilege it has been to stand beside and support as best I can all of you. I am very proud of this team and how they give their all to this county and this community. They lead with compassion. They are devoted to transparency. They do this in the face of adversity, personal challenges, and an endless demand for their time and energy. And of course they do. They always do what they must, because this is for you, Commissioner Jones-Dixon, America's favorite county deserves America's best communications team. Next slide, I'm ready for questions. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that was pretty good. We have an excellent communications team, and we will now open it up for questions to Dennis.
Right? Mic drop. On slide 3, there's a picture of
If you want to ask why we cropped it a certain way, that's understandable. No.
I have a question around some of the challenges, I think, that we face. I think it's very difficult to, as a government, try to correct misinformation, especially when that misinformation is being pushed out.
Yeah.
What is our general approach to that work? And, you know, one of the things that I think is difficult is sometimes misinformation can be so pervasive that it's almost as if that is the generalized baseline information you're now trying to fight against. And I bring this up because I think we've got some really important issues that I think the public has either very outdated or misinformation about, particularly homeless services and preschool for all. So I'm just wondering if your team has time to catch their breath, like what is some work that we can do to make sure the public just, you know, I'm not saying a fluff piece, but like being more, trying to get accurate information out there about how things are going and really the impact of the work.
I think one of the challenges over the last few years is that media has amplified some of those messages. Right, so I think we've been more successful than not in working with reporters. Part of that, we build those trusted relationships so we can give them information. It's not because we want to spin them, it's because we want to help them be accurate. I think of some recent examples, there were some questions about homeless services data and, some concerns about the number going up. And that's not a great story. We don't want to celebrate the number going up, but we want to provide accurate context around our rigor and the fact that it's a real number, it's a genuine number, it's a solid number. And so because we had those relationships with reporters, because we have good details, because we have done a lot proactively to bring people into our data conversation, we had them last year attend a data roundtable, we make things available, we make our subject matter experts available, we help change the course of that. That would have been different 2 years ago without those resources. I think preschool is another example. We've been able to share our actual tax filings and work with reporters on that. And Commissioner, we're also, there are probably some reporters who, if they were up here, would testify they don't like hearing from us as often as they do after stories are published, because we're not shy about trying to correct the record and respectfully. And, and it's not because we want a good story. Sometimes we don't deserve a good story because we haven't done something right. But when they have got something that's not quite right or there's something we can add, we want to make sure they have that information.
All right. Thank you so much, Dennis. Just really appreciate the work that you and your team do every single day, day in, day out. I think when things get really challenging, whether it's weather, whether it's a outbreak of something, you guys are stepping up and are busier than ever in addition to the work that you're doing every day. So and it's because it's so important for the community to understand what's going on and what Multnomah County's role is in it, what's happening with our programs and services, and then it's really important for our communications internally with our employees too. So just appreciate it. We couldn't do any of that without all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, each of you, for your support this last year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, yay, everybody. Yeah, I know, everybody gets the fist bumps now. Okay. Okay, so before we close, are there any budget amendments or notes anyone would like to bring forward? I have one, but I don't need to go first, so lay them on the table.
I've got a couple of amendments. One is an update to my workforce amendment for all the pay-fors are now in there. And then I have an amendment for federal response. It's to fund the immigration legal assistance that we had last year. It's $175,000, and then another 75 for mini grants for folks doing immigration services, because while we're not seeing as many detentions at this current moment, I don't expect the feds to change course.
Is this on top of the dollars already in the budget around immigration and federal response?
The dollars that I could identify in the budget around that were for housing. So this is in addition to that. This is legal services.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Does yours include legal services? The chair's budget under that.
It does. It kind of breaks it up, but yes, it does a bit, but we can, I don't know, Sarah, if you want to, we'll follow up. We'll follow up with a more detailed breakout of what the intention was for that. I think we all know that anything we do, the need is still greater, so open to having a conversation.
Yeah. And that's it.
This is my budget amendment number 6. This is a difficult one, and there will be more detail to come. I have a budget amendment to restore $1.2 million to Sun Community Schools. That is going to be achieved by a progressive decrease in internal administrative services. I have been talking to Chris and Christian about this. I will provide greater detail. I want to be very clear that this is not without internal pain. This is an amendment to what I think right size over the next year our internal services for our upcoming budget reality of the next several years. We are shrinking as a county. We will have to do things with less internal support. I believe that the community expects us to prioritize direct service. I have appreciated the degree to which I believe departments have tried and the chair's budget has tried. This really is how we move forward in my mind. So the savings is not just about this year. It is about doing this over a period of the next year in order to be running the leanest internal services that we can. One, to decrease the cost of internal services to departments, but also in acknowledgement that our budget is insufficient to fund a fully functioning county, and that we are going to need to make difficult decisions about where we reduce and who it's going to impact. And although I do believe that this cut will probably impact internal services to some degree, it does preserve a vital safety net for our most vulnerable children and families in the community. So that is this budget amendment.
Can I ask you a question, Commissioner Moyer?
Yeah.
So just so I understand it, so for example, the library presentation we had today had like a 8% increase in the internal services. So what you're suggesting is like, I haven't looked at it yet, sorry, but
My friend came, thank you.
a step down, and then instead of that money going, the step down, instead of it not being paid by the savings overall would then go, at least in this year, to offset the cut in the SUN program.
So yes, so I do understand that that largely creates a one-time only situation because it then gets rolled up into however we're calculating our internal services. And to be clear what I'm talking about, this is human resources, this is travel training, this is what gets combined together to go with how we look at the total cost per FTE. And it is not without real internal work. So it is not going to be day one of the 2027 budget. So that is where we're in communication, is how do we achieve this? But the goal is to make real reductions over the next year, which will have some savings in 2027 budget, but the long-term goal is that it then, as we roll up into 2028, 2029, that footprint is a smaller footprint.
Just on the one-time only nature, I'm working on a budget note now around SUN because it lives in a lot of places and people are leveraging contracts from other things. So if that's something you would like to see and make sure whatever you want to get out of this year is included, I'm happy to share that with you before introducing it.
Yeah, and I also have a budget note, and I think I talked about this when I released my budget, about YFS examining SUN, MSI, Family Resource Navigators, all of these kind of programs that have similar but slightly different functions, and really giving a recommendation on what this kind of programming should look like going forward. So I'd love to see if there's some synergy there. And then I'm not clear on, so this would be looking at kind of internal administrative costs throughout the county and coming up with another $1.2 million in savings?
Yes. Do you want to?
Okay.
Hi, Christian Elkin, County Budget Director. I haven't been here at all today. Just for clarification, because all the I words are, I'm now calling them the I words, indirect, internal services. So really the functionality here that the commissioner is talking about, and if I have this wrong, please just cut me off, I'll just turn off my mic, is really not around the internal services as you were talking about, like fleet, IT, those types of things. We're doing that work in concentration, but it's the bigger work around that the COO's office is doing with finance, shared services, HR, more of the administrative infrastructure that you see across the organization. So that's going to be in parallel with whatever work we're doing around internal services, but not the same as the internal services work that you were talking about.
So it says internal administration, but it's capitalized, but it really is like a more generic.
I'm sure we can uncapitalize that.
I'm just trying to understand, like,
it's not the
it's a
internal
generic
services.
thing.
Yes, it's more
Versus an
internal administration.
A proper noun.
Correct.
And same thing with the I for the infrastructure. This is.
Yeah, the I words are challenging, right, because they have a specific connotation, at least internally to us as an organization.
So just so I'm crystal clear, it's not the internal services, it's this sort of broader across the administrative.
Correct, the work that's being done with the COO's office.
Okay, and I guess I would look to, and I'll follow up on a conversation with Chris about like the dollar amount and what can be realized. What's the actual dollar amount that can be realized? Because I'm not,
You should have seen what I started with.
Okay, I mean, because I want to make sure that this is a real number, because we had conversations as we were putting my budget together about like what could we actually realize to add those dollars, and I think it was kind of difficult to ascertain, so I'd love to dig into this a little bit more.
So would this also include, I'm just throwing this out, the question, anybody can answer, like improvements in the span of control? I mean, over the last several weeks, we've seen numbers come in that were less than the number.
This is not that. Although I would say, in the centralization of services, I think there will be a look at span of control, but I would not say necessarily.
Like that's the way the savings, okay.
Correct.
Okay, any other budget amendments or notes?
Great, but informative.
Okay. Any other budget amendments or notes? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Everybody wants to hear what I would like to say. I have East County package, so there's, I think, a total of 6 amendments and 2 budget notes in here, and a few updates. I'll read through each one. And then we have a couple more amendments forthcoming. The first one is...
Actually, one's yours and one's Christian's.
Thank you. First one we presented, I believe, last week to restore the City of Gresham Homeless Services team. So we just put in the offset and updated that budget amendment that we submitted last week. The next one is a new amendment. It's for the 3 cities, or the 4 cities, including, I believe, Maywood Park, for homeless outreach services. So the description is there and the offset is on there. The next amendment that we have here, amendment number 3, is for eviction prevention services. And if it's similar, we can talk through that when we go through the list of amendments supporting the work through MPD and the Department of Human Services. And the next amendment is updating the offset for the amendment that we submitted last week for hygiene and preventative health services and employment services focused on East Multnomah County, or those services out there in East Multnomah County. And then the 5th amendment is for the Strategic Prosecution Unit through the DA's office. A lot of that work is it's a need out in East Multnomah County, similar to what we supported last year. And offset is on there. And then the next amendment is the amendment for workforce and employment services with the offset. It's listed there. That's amendment number 6. And then this is an update to the budget note that we discussed last week in regards to just establishing an IGA with the city of Gresham for homeless services for the next three years. And then lastly, this is a budget note in regards to the Main Street on Halsey street design plan. Just getting, we're trying to determine what is the funding plan for that project in the district. And then we have 2, what's that?
Is that our road?
That is our road,
Yeah.
yes. And then we have 2 amendments, or amendment that we're updating the OSU extension program. We included the offset for that, and it's co-sponsored by District 1 and Commissioner Moyer's office for the OSU extension program. And then we have a new proposed amendment, amendment number 8, for the reentry hub or transition hub that's being led by MCDC here in the district, and the description is there. I talked about that last week. And then lastly, this is a new amendment, amendment number 9, just restoring the funds for GPI, Greater Portland, Inc., and the economic development work that they're doing for us here within the region. And I'm open to any co-sponsors.
So is this on top of the dollars we already give to Greater Portland, Inc.?
It's my understanding that it wasn't included in your budget.
It 100% is included in my budget, yes.
Okay.
$30,000 back?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so I'll likely be rescinding that.
I mean, we can have a conversation if it should be included in my budget or not, but it is at this point included in my budget.
I so appreciate you, Chair. So we'll likely be rescinding that after we do our research. Thank you. More to come.
Any more? I have one. I forgot. I almost closed this out without doing it. Okay, so this is actually just building on some amendments we've seen before around the LGBTQIA 2S+ day services. And so there have been a couple amendments, and when those were presented, I said, I will take on looking for the pay for this. So I worked with our Homeless Services Department, and because of a decrease in the amount that's needed for a contract switch, there was additional dollars that are available. So this amendment, and I'm going to pass it out now so you guys can see what I'm talking about, is just reallocating dollars that are here, one for you, and then one for you, and then one for Christian. And then so reallocating dollars within the same program offer, but making sure that it's specific for the day center. So that is basically all of this, and I know that there's a lot of board interest in doing this, so I don't care whose amendment we end up using, but now we have a pay for. So, okay. Anything else? All right, so a couple of housekeeping items before we adjourn. That concludes the budget work session for today. As a reminder, tonight from 6 to 8 p.m., we have our final public budget hearing. This is a virtual public hearing. All spots to testify and the wait list have been filled. So for those who still wish to testify, please submit written testimony to our board clerk. We do read all of those, and they're really great about sending those out to us. The budget hearing is going to be available to stream on YouTube, so that's where people can watch it tonight again from 6 to 8 p.m. Our next meeting is going to be a regular board meeting tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Enjoy that extra half hour. And we also have, we also have a budget work session tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. So I want to make sure that we're clear. So tomorrow's work session afternoon, we are going to be finishing up DCM's presentation with the CFO and CBO content. And then we are inviting the health department back for follow-up. There was some interest in having them come back. We're also going to spend some time tomorrow talking through our approach to managing board amendments and helping us to organize that process as a board as we approach the last 2 weeks of our budget work. So I know board staff has been having that conversation. So so this will give us a chance to talk about how we want to approach that work. Next week, for some of our work session follow-ups, we plan to bring back the Homeless Services Department and the District Attorney's Office. If there are any other departments that people want to have back to come before the board to answer questions or to walk through any of the answers that they've sent, please let me and my staff know so we can start that process going. And as I said, our next regular meeting is tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So there being no further business, we are adjourned.
I just want to say publicly, you guys crushed it yesterday as far as the team, the comms team. I felt like I was, job well done to everyone that participated in the video, how you presented, Rakaya, it was great. So thank you, Chair. Like I said, second half.
Yeah, second half, final quarter, let's do it.
Yes.
All right, thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.